Morning, I'm Matt Sullivan. Welcome to our first Coffee and Connections here on Friday morning. I'm happy to be here today to talk to you about two specific projects that we're working on in the Planning and Development Department right now. The first one, go through a brief presentation with you on, that's the master plan effort, and the second one is the Route 28 project, and there are two components to that. The second of which I'll talk to you about today, which is outside of the Pickering Corner intersection, which you may be familiar with downtown. So I'll talk about the rest of the Route 28 corridor. But I wanted to start today by talking about the master plan, which is a massive project, not only for my office, but also for the town of Wolfeboro. It's a comprehensive planning effort that's done generally once every 10 years by New Hampshire communities. In the case of Wolfeboro, the last master plan was done in 2007. But I wanted to start off by sort of giving you an idea of what a master plan is. And I do have this presentation that I'll sort of have you follow along with to get a better understanding of how we've done the master plan in the town of Wolfeboro and how we'll be doing it this time around as well. So the first thing you need to know is that the master plan is an advisory document. And I'll explain why that's different from a lot of other things that the Planning and Development Department uses. We use a zoning ordinance and different regulations to determine how growth happens in the community. And those things are legally binding, and a master plan isn't that. It's more of a visionary document that provides a shared vision for the community into the future. And as I say here, it sort of forms the foundation for how we do other planning documents, including that zoning ordinance, site plan regulations, subdivision regulations, our capital improvements plan, which is critical for getting warrants together and getting projects done in the community, and other strategic planning documents like our public safety building study and other capital facilities planning that we do outside of that. So again, while it's not legally binding, it's really important because it's an incredibly important advisory document for a lot of the things that we do both in this department and outside. So we ask a couple questions as part of the master plan. They're really, really big questions, and everybody has a different sense of how to answer these questions, and that's why we try to get a lot of people involved in our process. So the first one we ask is, what does the community look like today? What things are happening right now? What are the problems? What are the strengths? What are the weaknesses of the community? What things do we know to be happening now and over the last sort of 10-year period since that last master plan was done? Second question we ask is, what is the direction or the vision for the community 5, 10, 20 years into the future? It depends, again, for every person, this is a little different what their vision is. Typically, we urge people to look at a 10-year vision because that's sort of the way that we update our master plan. But that's the second question we ask. Third question is the most important one of a master plan. It's sort of the meat and potatoes, if you will. And that's how do we actually go about getting to that vision that we have identified for 10 or 20 years. So sort of some actual things that we will plan to do in the future to get towards that. So that's really, really important. Now, those are the three big questions. The master plan includes a couple different things. Again, I talked about assessments of what our existing resources are, projections of what future things might happen, conditions, needs, population, those sorts of things that have a big impact on community growth, what our collective goals and desires actually are, and then we work on really translating those community values and that vision I talked about into the concrete action steps I mentioned just a second ago. And those are in the form of goals, recommendations, action steps that actually have a term and a sort of responsible group assigned to them. So that's sort of what comes out of the master plan. I'll talk about that a little bit more in the next few minutes. I mentioned that the 2007 master plan was the last version that was done. This is sort of just the way that the master plan was structured, and generally we structure our master plans by chapters. The chapters we chose then are listed here: arts and culture, community facilities, economic base, future land use, greater downtown, health and human services, housing, infrastructure, recreation, population, and transportation. But most importantly, you see at the bottom here, the implementation section. Those are those goals and recommendations that we're actually working on the 10 years that follow the master plan to make sure that we work towards that shared vision. And this is just the cover page of the 2007 plan as it was done at that time. The vision I won't read. What I think I do want to point out about this, though, is that the 2007 vision was nearly identical, and I mean almost to the word, of the 1996 vision. And what that shows is that the vision of the community and a lot of the things that we're striving for, they haven't changed over time. And that's not to say that we haven't worked towards that vision, but it is to say that we have the same priorities. At least in 2007, we had the same priorities that we had in 1996. I can say that We've had our master plan forum earlier this year, and in discussions about our existing vision statement, it seems that the vision statement may be very similar for this iteration of the master plan in 2018. So again, we see that the vision itself has not changed in a big way, which I think is important. And it's good to start off our master plan process with a common vision that we all understand. So I think that's a really positive step. One thing I want to say, though, when from all of this discussion today, I think the one thing I want to leave you with is that the biggest thing about the 2007 master plan that is different from other master plans that you'll see around the state, and I mean this, I've done work in other communities, I think this is unique to the town of Wolfeboro, and that is that things got done. In so many communities, and you may be able to see in the frame of reference here, that we have plans on our shelves here that sort of sit here when we have our meetings, we pull them off every so often. That didn't have it happen with the 2007 master plan. The 2007 master plan was used. The implementation that I talked about, those actions and recommendations, people actively tracked those for years following and actually worked to complete those things with projects on the ground. And I want to give you a few examples of what I'm talking about. I would want to mention, too, first, that there are a lot of groups that can be thanked for a lot of that work that was done. The Master Plan Implementation Committee, Planning Board, Capital Improvements Committee, town management, department heads, town staff, really everybody, all of the stakeholders that were involved in that 2007 plan and then after really were critical for getting those projects done. But let's take a look at what exactly I'm talking about. So what I've done here is sort of show, an example of a goal and recommendation from that 2007 plan. In this case, this is a Greater Downtown chapter that was done in 2007, and it talked about encouraging improvements at the dockside area and at the railroad station. You may know, I've only been here for a few years, but if you were here back in 2007, the dockside area and the railroad station area looked much different than they do today. There was not, I don't want to say dilapidated, but there were certainly some conditions down there that needed to be improved. The Public Works Department has been integral in making those improvements, and now we have these two incredible areas that continue to improve through additional projects. But really, we made a push to make those improvements after the 2007 plan identified this as a critical thing that we needed to be looking at. So I want to thank the Greater Downtown chapter for recommending that. Additionally, for those of you who know, on the regulatory side of sort of what the Planning Development Department does, water quality is very, very important to us, particularly Lake Winnipesaukee, Wentworth, our other water bodies. Water is key. It's an economic driver for the town of Wolfeboro. Additionally, obviously, it has its environmental component. We have increased shoreland rules, or what they're called. The state has its own shoreland rules. In the town of Wolfeboro, though, it was actually recommended that we adopt our own. And sure enough, after the 2007 plan, we did. We have more restrictive regulations that we believe create more water quality protection and more environmental protection in the shoreland area. So we think that we're really doing our best to protect that vital component of the town. It's timely that I'm talking about this today. As I give this presentation, we've actually just passed the library project at the town warrant, which is really, really exciting. And that actually came out of the community facilities chapter of the 2007 plan. The discussion then was about forming a building committee and determining the needs of what a future library facility might need. And sure enough, we're on the path to doing that. Fortunately, the voters approved that, I believe, by a 79% vote on a bond. And we're really excited to get working on this project. But again, its roots are in the master plan. It was discussed as part of this effort back in 2007. I'm sitting in the town hall right now. The town hall was also a focus of the 2007 plan, determining what our space needs would be for the future staff needs, looking at least to 2030. Now we have this beautiful town facility, and everybody's fortunate to be able to work here. But again, roots in the master plan process. This is a harder one to capture, but I just wanted to quickly talk about it. We really are working to make Wolfeboro as walkable as we possibly can. This is sort of a push around the country, and Wolfeboro does have its own, really neat, unique downtown area, but making it more walkable so that folks can park and walk to different destinations. We've made a lot of improvements in the last 10 years, and just a few examples of how pedestrians are using that space are shown here. Another thing I just want to quickly mention is that the Bay Street Sidewalk Project did pass our warrant as well, so we'll be doing some research there to talk about connectivity between Mill Street, Bay Street, the potential boat museum in the future, and some other economic development that's happened in this area with some businesses that are being developed there. So we're really excited about the possibility of extending a walkway out there for sort of loop connectivity in the future. And I just quickly wanted to say, too, that the 2007 plan wasn't unique. The 1996 master plan also was hugely successful. We made a lot of steps, we took a lot of steps forward, some bandstand work, really looking at senior housing and the availability of that through the Taylor Home Project. Sewell Woods, and then again, additional improvements at Dockside were recommended as part of that 96 master plan, and we've done a lot of work. So again, if there's one thing I could leave you with on the master plan, it's really that we get things done when they're identified within that plan, and that's unique about Wolfeboro. And that's why it's so important that if you are interested in getting involved in the process or have questions about the process or want to join one of our subcommittees, which we'll talk about in a second, please reach out to me because your input is really, really critical. I'll quickly go through this. We had a 2016 master plan survey done. There were sort of some big conclusions that came out of that. Obviously, rural character is still a critical issue for people and one of the biggest reasons why people live here or chose to come here. We don't want to see big growth. Moderate or slow population growth is really the preference of existing residents. They don't want to see a boom in population, which makes a lot of sense based on Wolfeboro's sort of past development trends. Housing is considered more affordable now than it was 10 years ago. Obviously, market conditions are a critical piece of that, but I think the housing chapter will approach this issue because I think there's some disagreement in the community about whether or not housing is really affordable right now. A lot of respondents said as part of that survey that they travel to the downtown area. So as I was saying, our downtown is a critical piece of our economic development and our economy. Tourism and special events, there's no question if you're here for 4 seasons or just the season in the middle, the nice season, you know that tourism and special events are really one of the big drivers for the community. And there's no question that when we look at our economy, we have to consider that as sort of the basis or the foundation. Now, that's not to say that we shouldn't work towards a 4-season economy. I think that's one of the big goals, to make this more of a year-round community, but we recognize that tourism dollars or guests to our community are really, really critical. And then I just wanted to end sort of with this on the 2016 survey. In 2006, rather, when the original survey was done many, many years ago before the 2007 plan, parking was a huge issue. That's not the case anymore, apparently, and I'm not sure what exactly the reasoning is behind that, but now parking appears not to be an issue in the downtown area, which I think is fantastic, and I think that we want to work to increase parking, perhaps in some different locations, but really encourage that walkability in the downtown area so we can get people out of their cars rather than driving around. So quickly on our 2018 plan, we're doing things a little bit differently. We have a little bit different structure, some new chapters. We have an energy chapter. We have a cultural and historical resources dedicated chapter. We'll have a natural resources chapter. But a lot of the same issues are going to be discussed just in a different format. We're structuring it a bit differently. Now, with all of those chapters, we actually have 6 subcommittees that are going to be meeting to actually work on these chapters. So in this case, staff are sort of providing technical assistance, but these folks are going to be writing the chapters. We have a Housing, Economic Development, and Population subcommittee. We have a Natural Resources subcommittee, Cultural and Historical Resources subcommittee, Transportation, Public Infrastructure subcommittee, Energy, and Community Facilities subcommittee. So a lot of folks on the planning board doing a lot of work to make sure that these chapters get done, hopefully by the end of 2018. I just want to mention quickly that the Vision chapter will be done by the planning board. I mentioned that a few minutes ago, I believe. And then land use will be done later in 2018 after all of these chapters have done their work. So a lot of stuff going on throughout the year. I won't go into this too much, but I just want to say if you're interested in joining a subcommittee, they'll be the ones responsible for writing the documents. They're really the critical people behind the content that will be developed out of this. But if you're interested in joining a subcommittee, please do reach out to me. Won't get into this too much either, but I just want to say that by the end of 2018, we plan to have most of our chapters drafted, but won't be adopting this master plan until early 2019. That's if all goes to plan, which we hope it does. So with that said, I just wanted to shift into another project. This is the Route 28 project. Okay, so the second project we're going to talk about today is the Route 28 corridor project. And just a quick background, this project is scheduled for 2024, but because Wolfeboro is always very good at being proactive, we're actually beginning to talk about the project 6 years early, which is really fantastic for us and for our relationship with NHDOT and for the potential of the project long term. So there are 5 segments to the Route 28 corridor project. The 5th of the segments actually is already underway. That's the Center Street improvements. So that project component has already begun. The other 4, however, which are scheduled for 2024, involve some of the intersections that you're probably very familiar with when you travel through town. The 2 I'm not going to talk about right now because they're a bit more involved are the Pickering Corner intersection, which we've had a public hearing on, public meeting on. We have 3 potential proposed designs there: a roundabout, a signalized intersection, and sort of a no build, if you will, that includes some increased striping and safety measures. So I won't talk about that in detail right now. Additionally, I won't talk about Weston's Auto Body. I'm sure you all know that intersection. It's a challenging intersection with a lot of complications that at this point we don't have any clear solution for without a significant potential land taking. So we're sort of in discussions with DOT about what can be done there, and we all know the issues that exist. So what I am going to talk about first is a segment between Clark Road and Clark Road and the Public Safety Building in Wolfeboro. This is sort of a critical area for us right now. There are a couple things happening, obviously. We have the library project, which I spoke about earlier. We're really happy this is moving forward, but that's going to be constructed in the next few years. Additionally, right now, I'm working on a committee for the Public Safety Building. We're doing a space needs analysis in the Public Safety Building. So depending on the findings of that study, there may be some reconfiguration happening on this site as well. So this area is really an area of change right now. So we're looking at this comprehensively. Now, the changes here when it comes to the road are minimal. What we're proposing to do is to not add any center turning lane, which was originally proposed. The feeling was that a center turn lane would remove the green space, which you see indicated here in green, and would push traffic immediately up against the sidewalk, potentially creating a pedestrian safety issue. And additionally, when you create a center turn lane, create more pavement for cars to drive on, you potentially increase speeds, which for vehicular safety is not a good thing. So what we've done here instead is actually decrease the width in the lanes by 1 foot each, add more of a shoulder for potential bike use and sort of safety area, and then we do maintain that green space adjacent to the sidewalks so that there is a buffer between the pedestrians and the vehicles. With those changes, that's really the big changes here in this corridor. There will be some increased green space. Additionally, you may know that there are flashing beacons for when the fire trucks and other emergency personnel come out of here in this location and this location. We'd be changing that to a flashing beacon right here that hopefully would be more visible. In my opinion, the existing flashing lights are at a height that doesn't really make them particularly visible and maybe create a safety issue for these emergency vehicles. But we are exploring a change here that would create that flashing beacon long term. So that would be, I believe, a positive change. Those are the only things that we're talking about doing here. So I'm going to quickly move to the Pleasant Valley Road intersection, which is also the McManus and High School and Golf Course area. Okay, so the second intersection I'm going to talk about is the McManus Road intersection, as I mentioned, and Pleasant Valley Roads. There are 2 big changes that are being proposed here. The first of which is the addition of a left-hand turn lane coming south on Route 28, entering the high school. The impetus for this is, as you may know, if you're driving south on 28 in the morning between, let's say, 7 and 8 a.m., there's a significant traffic backup, in some cases all the way down to Brewster Academy. So we're looking to alleviate that by creating a stacking lane and turning lane into McManus Road that would allow traffic pass-through for commuters heading to the south. And that turning lane would extend back a good way, and again, hopefully alleviate some traffic congestion that exists there in the morning times. Additionally, you may know this is a yield right now coming off of Pleasant Valley Road. In some cases, there are some safety concerns. Folks really speed up here to either beat the car coming up South Main Street, or these folks are confused about what the traffic pattern here is. So what we're proposing to do here is actually eliminate that and tee this up, if you will, and create a stop line intersection here. Again, that removes the yield and does create a stop sign. However, we believe that it increases the safety of the intersection. One thing I want to point out is this is existing space that's used by that road area. It will become a green space. These properties right here would need to have driveway entrances that would presumably cross over the green space, but we haven't explored that yet, as these are conceptual plans, but we expect that they would be able to cross that space. And those are really the 2 changes that are being proposed. The one thing I did want to mention quickly that isn't shown on this drawing, we are still exploring options for the Kingswood Golf Course crossing, which is a significant safety concern during the summer season when there are golf carts and pedestrians using that area. As of right now, we don't have a solution proposed specifically for it, but we are discussing options with DOT. Several different options have been proposed, including lighting, different signage, maybe removing signage and lighting in this area to minimize sort of light pollution and sign pollution. But we are certainly addressing that issue as part of this comprehensive planning effort. But as you can see from the two examples I've just given with the public safety building area and this area, we aren't proposing significant changes. I think we recognize these corridors are functioning relatively well. There's nothing we can do, in our opinion, to alleviate the traffic congestion during the summer months, during the peak times. But what we can do is increase safety during those times, and that's really that's the big goal of this project long term. So again, this is scheduled for 2024, construction in 2024. However, we plan to be working with NHDOT over the coming years to do study, further design, collect data and information, and hopefully come up with the best design project that we can for the entire corridor all the way out to the Alton Town line. With that, I just want to thank you for joining me on this edition of Coffee and Connections. I'm Matt Sullivan, the Planning Director again. If you have any questions about anything I've talked about, my number is 603-569-5970. You can also email me. I'm a little faster on email. I'm a younger guy, so I'm on my phone or computer quite often. And my email is planningdirector@wolfeboronh.us. Thanks again so much for joining me.